What's going on, my little rock stars, and welcome back to a new video. I'm sorry if I sound sick. Truth is, I really am sick of all the complaining about Wonderlands, so here I am to give you some actual unique content by going back to the old reliable top 5s. In another classic ENDGAME banger today, we're going to be counting down my top 5 favorite endgame pieces of content inside of the Borderlands franchise. Now, there's going to be a few things that I don't class as endgame, and if I were to go into detail as to why, it would take me 20 minutes, but just so you know, here is the complete list of everything that I'm going to be taking into account when I make my ranking here. I'm sorry if your favorite side mission isn't on here. This is just stuff that I class as true endgame content. There could be stuff that fits into some of these categories and for which reason isn't listed, like the Snowman DLC for me fits into the same category as an Invincible because Tinder is just like a repeatable boss farm. I know that might not make much sense to you, but it does to me, so if you don't like it, click off the video. I don't care. Here we go. Coming in at number 5, I have the Proving Grounds from Borderlands 3. This is a piece of endgame content which for me is at number 5 for two different reasons, and it's kind of bittersweet. Before Borderlands 3 launched, I'm sure a lot of you remember hearing that the Proving Grounds were the newest and greatest piece of endgame in the Borderlands franchise, which we're going to be taking a mainstay and we're going to be the big new activity that everybody runs at the end of the game. We were told there was going to be tons of loot and that it was going to be a great challenge, and then when launch hit, none of those things were true, and the Proving Grounds were some of the most boring content we'd seen in a while. Now, they did rectify these mistakes by the end of Borderlands 3 by adding a true trials switch and also upping the amount of loot that drops from those endgame bosses, but all in all, the Proving Grounds for me never really captured that initial spark they were trying to light. The main reason why I have the Proving Grounds on the list is because I like the little side objectives, like getting it done in under a certain time to increase the quality of loot from the chest at the end, and I also love the tie-in of the Iridians, so the Proving Grounds again for me is on this list because I on one hand like the idea, and on another hand I hate the execution. But I do want to respect the drip, and hopefully in Borderlands 4 the Proving Grounds come back and actually hold true to their promise from day one. Now, moving on to the number 4 spot, we have the seasonal events from Borderlands 3. I am of course talking about stuff like the Captain Haunt boss fight from the Bloody Harvest event and also the Revenge of the Cartels. These are things which I consider to be endgame content that only people who are at endgame take the time out of their day to do because of the loot and the risk reward factor they have. The Revenge of the Cartels in particular, a lot of people, believe it or not, don't remember as it being a seasonal event, but it was indeed a seasonal event that eventually went away and then came back and then went away and came back again, so it does make it into that category for me. And I don't think there's much to say about these that haven't already been said. It's just a great set of content. Now, the only reason I will say that they are in number 4 and not higher on the list, because I know a lot of you guys are like, whoa, come on, Epic, Cartels is a banger, some of the best content we've ever had. You are correct, but the reason why seasonal events is on here isn't because of the pure meat that you get from those pieces of content in particular. It's because of the rest of the seasonal event model. The way seasonal events were done in Borderlands 3 was extremely questionable, with almost a battle pass like layout making you do various objectives in specific seasonal events to get specific loot rewards from that event. But this did come with a bunch of issues, from stuff like guns not being anointed to other things like the quests they want you to do just not being very fun. And then we also get into the misses like the extremely rocky road that seasonal events had, starting off with a banger like Bloody Harvest and then going to something underwhelming like Broken Hearts Day. It always felt like whatever momentum the seasonal events had, they failed to keep, and that's why I can't put them higher on the list even though I so desperately want to. Now, if I was ranking purely the maps like Heck and the Cartels in particular, of course they'd be near number 1, but that's not what we're doing, so that's not where they're going. Here's hoping when seasonal events return in Wonderlands or maybe even Borderlands 4, the overall model is structured a lot better, which is more inviting for players all around. Now, you may be shocked to hear this one. I'm sure this is going to get everybody up in arms in the comment section down below, but number 3 on my best endgame content list is the Chaos Chamber from Wonderlands. I'm probably going to catch a ton of flack for this because people for some reason still refuse to call Wonderlands a Borderlands game, but I do not, so that's why it's on the list here at number 3, and the Chaos Chamber for me is legitimately some of the best endgame content we've seen in a Borderlands game. Now, it's no secret that at this point in the Wonderlands life cycle, this content has been forced down our throat at an undigestible amount. However, I think it's important to remember that the Chaos Chamber is legitimately great content. Now, with that being said, the reason why the Chaos Chamber is in number 3 on my list is because of the Mayhem modifiers, which I outlined in my review of Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. In Borderlands 3, one of the most notorious complaints constraints was mayhem modifiers, so you would think that going into Wonderlands, Gearbox would say, okay, we're not putting these in the game anymore, but that is not what happened. They returned for another big helping that nobody wanted, but everybody had to take the spoon of whatever it was they were serving up. I cannot stand the mayhem modifiers in the Chaos Chamber, so having them in there is such a mind-boggling decision for me personally. Now on the flip side of this, one of the coolest features in the Chaos Chamber, and the reason why I absolutely had to get it on my list at this height and why it beat out seasonal events, is because of the secret bosses. Anything from Bunidhogg to the Maker, which in my opinion is the coolest fight in Borderlands history, don't at me. They really capture that big fight feeling, and it always gets me coming back for more. I love these bosses, and even though the Chaos Chamber is frustrating with the mayhem modifier situation, it's still really fun content to do. And then there's the final room with the bunnies, where you get to go in there and feed them crystals to get the loot you want. It's really good content. Unfortunately, Gearbox started forcing it down players' throats. However, I will say that the Chaos Chamber is legitimately good content. Now, coming in at number 2, we've got a fan favorite, the Invincibles from Borderlands 1, Borderlands 2, Borderlands 3, believe it or not, and not Wonderlands. Who doesn't love the good old classic pay iridium, fight a boss, rinse and repeat for good loot system? It's really great and something that's been a staple of the looter shooter genre for basically ever. And anytime someone brings up why they don't like Borderlands 3 in comparison to Borderlands 2, I bet you've heard them say Invincibles, Invincibles, Invincibles. While some players will tell you that Invincibles are extremely repetitive and get boring fast, a lot of other people would disagree, calling Invincibles the best content in the Borderlands franchise. As I said, the premise is simple. You pay iridium or any other currency, drop into a fight with this boss, almost get your balls blasted off, but if you take them down, you get to run away with some of their great loot. And this concept of jumping into a massive arena, summoning a boss, fighting and getting its loot was repeated in various different iterations. Like the Snowman DLC Headhunter was very reminiscent of an Invincible, even though Tinder gets absolutely destroyed, or even stuff like the takedowns where Invincibles would be added to the end as a massive climactic boss fight. Now unfortunately I couldn't put them at my number 1 just because they don't really do anything groundbreaking. It's just kind of drop in and fight an enemy, and that's not a bad thing. I just don't think it deserves the number 1 spot. I think that should be saved for something that takes that step a little further. But all in all, I love Invincibles, and it's a great way to segue us into the number 1 spot, which I'm sure is very predictable for a lot of people, because my number 1 piece of endgame content in the Borderlands franchise is the takedowns from Borderlands 3. Man, what is there to say about takedowns that hasn't already been said? There's something which feels so great and so grand about going to, for example, a facility like the Malawan takedown facility and forming an attack on it. It makes you feel like the odds are stacked against you, and when you finally conquer it, you feel like a champion. The main premise of a takedown is relatively simple. You start off by wiping out a few ads to get yourself to the first little checkpoint area, where you will then fight a mini boss. Then once you kill the mini boss, you'll fight a bunch more ads, this time ramping up in difficulty, all before the coup de grace with one massive invincible boss fight like Wotan the Invincible or Scourge the Invincible Martyr. But that wasn't all these bosses had to offer. It was also the loot that players would run through them for. Many of you may remember when the Malawan takedown came out, the redistributor was all the rage and everybody wanted to get their hands on it. Many times I hear people wish that they would bring content from Destiny into Borderlands, and the takedowns I would say is the closest we've ever gotten to a feeling like that. While the idea of some extremely badass bosses and a few mobbing sections isn't exactly copyrighted, I will say that the way Gearbox implemented it is extremely impressive and really fun in practice. However, Gearbox did seemingly get cold feet when Guardian Takedown came out, never releasing another takedown since, so who knows if we'll see them come back in the future. I'm sure in like 4 months from now one's gonna drop and make me look really stupid, but please bring back the takedown system in Wonderlands or Borderlands 4, Gearbox. I will kiss you. And with that being said, let me know what you guys think of takedowns in the comment section down below, along with the rest of the choices on my list. And if you remember at the start of the video where I showed you what I was going to be ranking, feel free to give me your top 5 in the comment section down below. Anyway guys, until next time, take it easy, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.